Welcome back to the List Lab. I'm Sam Morgan, coming at you live from Guyran Community College, and today we're going to be talking about the Battle for Ravenhall, which is a tournament I went to recently. Probably the second last AOS2 tournament I'll ever attend, I reckon. So just going to do a bit of a rundown of the event, give my thoughts overall, and talk about my personal performance there. So Battle for Ravenhall was a 2-day grand tournament style event. The pack had a wide variety of different scenarios, and that included the Scorched Earth to start off with, shifting objectives and focal points to round out day one. And then day two was a little bit different to what you typically see, and we had Places of Arcane Power and Total Commitment. The other thing of note about the pack was that in list selection, you could choose a realm that you hail from, and that realm could then be chosen if you were to win the roll-off at the start of the game to determine who deploys the first unit. So, say for instance, you won the roll-off and your army was from the Realm of Shadow, you'd have two choices. Did you want to be playing in Ulgu, or did you want to pick table sides? So if you chose the realm, your opponent would choose sides. Either way, the person who won the roll-off would be the person to place the first unit down. So it's a really interesting change to the core mechanics, and it meant that we saw some quirky picks included, because some of the realms, when you look at the realm spells and command abilities, do offer things to lists that otherwise wouldn't be available. So I really like that as something a bit different. My overall feeling on realms is that they're unnecessary bloat, but adding them in this way, it felt good without being intrusive. So in terms of the scenarios, Scorched Earth, Focal Points, and Places of Arcane Power, all three of those privilege strong, durable heroes. So if you're scoring an additional point or protecting objectives in Scorched Earth, if you're able to score an additional point because you're a behemoth or monster in Focal Points, and then in Places of Arcane Power, obviously only heroes can score. So if there was ever a pack for Gargants to go away and get the 5-0, this was it. Spoiler, they didn't. So let's jump into my list. What did I take? The last ride of the Dolores Guards. I've been playing Mixed Death now pretty much exclusively. I've got a couple of games in with the new Daughters of Cain because they're sort of my first love, but this is probably 6 months worth of grinding. This is where I've got to. Certainly it's not the strongest Mixed Death list, but it's the list that I enjoy playing the most. So it's got 3 support heroes, a Guardian of Souls, a Necromancer, and a Vampire Lord. All 3 of those are able to provide really strong healing in this list. And buff. So the Necromancer gives you fight twice, the Vampire Lord gives you an additional attack, and then the Guardian of Souls gives +1 to wound to Nighthaunt units. It's then supported by 3x10 zombies in battle line. The only scenario where battle line was really a factor was shifting objectives, and I don't feel like me having zombies, or say for instance 80 Chain Rasp Horde instead of them, was a determining factor in that game. So I'm happy with the minimum zombies at 180 points. Then I have 20 Hex Wraiths, an additional 5 Hex Wraiths, and a further 5 Hex Wraiths. So 30 Hex Wraiths. Those are all rolled up in a battalion called the Dolores Guard. Gives you +1 attack on the charge, and means that the Guardian of Souls is as close to unkillable as you can get. So every time he takes a wound or mortal, he passes that onto a Hex Wraith on a 2+ if they're within 3, and that's coupled with him having the artifact, the Cloak of Mist and Shadows, which enables him to ostensibly get out of combat every single phase. So you can do a 13-inch teleport at the start of the combat phase, and it means I can always move that +1 to wound bubble around where I need it and do some cheeky stealing objectives tricks as well. So that's the core of the army, and then that gets you to about 1,400 points. Then I've got 600 points that I've constantly been rotating. So in this particular event, I took 2 Mortek Crawlers and the Burning Head to round out the list. And the idea there was I found in lists that were predicated on combat, if my opponent could outrange me, either by being faster or by having shooting attacks, so being able to project power, then it was really difficult for me to get the matchups I wanted with my 20 Hex Wraiths. So I got my Hex Wraiths, doing 320 attacks and typically re-rolling some misses and +1 to wound and all of that stuff, right? Doing mortal wounds in the movement phase. Like they are an absolute blender. However, if my opponent can outrange them, they can avoid them in a number of ways, and I feel like the Mortek Crawlers enable me to dictate combats a bit better because they incentivize my opponent coming towards me, because they've got to get rid of them. Otherwise, over the course of the game, two of them, pumping out 3 shots each, or sniping characters, or breaking coherence, or doing those sort of things, two of them is enough to win you games. So it's enough of a threat that you can actually draw your opponent in. I've then got an extra command point because this army's thirsty. This army wants to be using command points. I mentioned before reroll to hit, so I'm typically using that reroll 1s to hit in the combat phase. I've got +1 attack from the Vampire Lord. I'm wanting to reroll charges for their Hex Wraith. So there's a number of reasons that I want to use command points, and where possible, I try and conserve command points in the early game. So turns 1 and 2, an optimal turn 1 for me is probably getting Mystic Shield up on the 20 Hex Wraiths, nuking something with the Crawler, and setting really, really good screens with the zombies, so that if, say that's me going first, if my opponent gets a double, they don't do anything to me. Or alternatively, if I'm going second and I'm on for the double, I'm retaining, so that I've got 4 command points heading into turn 2, and then I can really utilise those. The Burning Head's a nice bit of tech, because what that enables the Mortek Crawlers to do is reroll 1s to hit, so they natively hit on 2s, wound on 3s, but also what you can do with that is chip wounds off the Mortek Crawlers so that your snipes become more effective, because before the Crawlers are bracketed, they're at -3. So say, for instance, you want to kill, let's just say, a 7 wound character for the sake of it. You want to kill a 7 wound character, you need to roll a 10 in order to do that. So if you're able to bracket them, right, it drops down to -1. All of a sudden, you only need to roll an 8, and 2 cracks at an 8. The math is significantly better than 10 on a reroll. So, the Burning Head was pretty useful all weekend. And then the list comes in at 1960 because, again, we're doing everything in our control to optimize the Hex Wraith. So we want them to have ideally reroll to hits, but equally reroll saves is very good in the right matchup. So overall, I'd probably rate this as a 3 and 2 list. There are some elements to the list that are incredibly strong, but it obviously has some glaring deficiencies. But from a fun perspective, this is as much fun as I've had playing Warhammer, running lists like this. I think if the tournament were to run again this weekend, I'd probably drop the Crawlers and instead the Crawlers and the Burning Head, and instead replace those with Ghoul King on Terrorgeist, just to get some additional summoning. I've got the Blade of Dark Summons in there, which gives me 2d6 wounds worth of a summonable unit once per game. But to get the extra summoning in from the Terrorgeist, and to get some more mortal wounds, and then to have 2 offensive threats, but that's just more about playstyle than strength. I think obviously 2 Crawlers is stronger than the Terrorgeist outside of the Feck book, but I think the Terrorgeist would be a lot more fun to play with. So if Age of Sigmar 2 was enduring forever, which is sort of what the Broken Realms feels like a bit at the moment anyway. If it was enduring forever, I'd probably swap those Crawlers out and get the Terrorgeist in. And I've just got a beautiful Terrorgeist / zombie dragon painted up as a Carmine dragon with heaps of bespoke sort of conversion work and a beautiful paint job. So I'm keen to get that one on the table as well. All right, round 1. So round 1, I had grudged my good friend Jared Coots. Jared lives in Geelong, which is a regional city. It's about an hour's drive and 20 years back in time from Melbourne. So Jared's an awesome guy out there, but we don't get to play all that frequently. So probably, at events is about it for us. So whenever there's an opportunity for me to get a game in with him, I'll always grab that. And I joked with Jared that was going to be to my detriment this tournament, because strength of schedule was the tiebreaker for the event. So I said, he's going to finish on the bottom of the ladder and he's going to do me in, which he subsequently then tried his hardest to lose all his games. We had a cracking game in Scorched Earth, and I've taken a picture here of deployment so you can see. Basically, I've screened across the board, and I thought I was particularly clever because I thought, well, Jared's going to obviously give me first turn, so he's on for the double. He's a plague-touched warband. He has a whole heap of Chaos Knights. He's got a couple of Sorcerers and the Karkadrak Lord, so he's got a heap of support pieces, not dissimilar to me. And the obvious play for him is to give away first. I can't burn any objectives turn 1, then he's on for the double, but equally can never be doubled by my pretty fighty army. But he surprised me by actually taking first and then teleporting 40 Marauders in, and really pinning me in behind my lines there. I've made a mistake in deployment. You can see with the central most unit of zombies, there's a cheeky little gap there that Marauders on their 25mm bases are able to get through quite easily. So that was just a mistake on my behalf, and I thought that was probably going to cost me the game. It did take away a significant amount of my combat punch. We got to a point in the game, Jared was up sort of 10-7 heading into turn 2. He's the Slaves to Darkness army where you're able to summon 10 Marauders per turn. So he's just putting constant pressure on me, right? And we get to this point in the game. Jared's up 10-7, and I sort of thought to myself, I'm going to lose here. I was teasing this bloke saying, please don't come last, and I'm going to lose. And he proceeds to roll a 5 for priority, and I'm not going to do this to all my opponents, but I want Jared to see this. I hit a big 6, so how good's that? Basically what ends up happening, like, priority did play a significant factor, and I'm not going to be that guy that shows priority rolls every game, but priority did play a significant factor. But really what ended up happening was he kept his characters back in order to stay out of range of the Mortek crawlers, which I think on balance is the right play, right? I think it's the right play to protect your characters early game. However, he forgot to shuffle them forward, so just like 1/1000th of a millimeter of those models was touching the bases in Scorched Earth. So what that meant is when I got the turn 3, from turn 2 going into turn 3, I was able to just retreat from unfavourable combats, run as fast as I could. I summoned a unit on, pushed them forward, and I was able to steal 3 objectives, which otherwise typically would have had support characters guarding them, right? So therefore I couldn't burn them, and I was able to burn 3 objectives. And for that reason, I think this is a bad scenario, right? I hit 8 on my rolls, +1 for some characters, and that makes the game insurmountable for him. He's actually outplayed me, right? He's outplayed me for the vast majority of that game. I hit some spiky rolls and have enough coverage on a home objective that he's never going to get it, and then the lead becomes insurmountable for him. And to me, that doesn't feel like the right outcome for that game. I feel like he played a really good game. He'd thought about it in advance. He did some tricksy and clever stuff, right? But he's punished too much for a mistake. I think the punishment is like inconsistent with the error. The other thing I just wanted to point out about this game, I've just noticed from the photograph, is that before the game I talked him through, so the crawler can pick out individual models, and I did the whole, for instance, your Sorcerer Lords have 5 wounds. If I'm able to roll an 8 on 2 dice, they're dead. That's the Sorcerer Lord is an enormously important model in a Slaves to Darkness army, and I think arguably one of the most undercosted wizards in the game, which is pretty funny considering it's a one caster, and people's criticism of wizards typically is it's only a one caster. But what the Sorcerer Lord brings in terms of reroll saves and their spell, obviously, and access to that fantastic Slaves to Darkness lore, really is an enormous force multiplier in this army. But specifically, it's just a huge pain in your backside if you're playing against a Khorne or Zench Archeon build where they're taken in the other faction. So I told him about that, and he'd protected his characters really well from those single shots. But what he didn't do was create a situation where his big unit of 10 Chaos Knights were sort of within an inch of 2 models each. So I was able to split that unit in half, and the Mortex killed 6 Chaos Knights in one turn, which was a thing of beauty. So where do we end up? I ended up winning. I sort of skipped away with it, but as I said, I don't feel that the end result was in any way reflective of the way that the game was played on the table. So heaps of fun playing with Jared. After the game, we went out and got pancakes, so you can't complain about that. Actually, we went to a pancake restaurant and we both got eggs on toast, but that's irrelevant. More than happy to give Coots a game next event as well. All right, so round 2, I'm feeling myself here. I'm up on the second table, the third table, the something table. It's strength of schedule round 1, right? So anyone that's had a win is coming first. So I'm coming first at the event, feeling pretty good about myself, and I get drawn against Joel Graham. Joel is the number 1, number 2. Joel is right up there in the Australian match play rankings. He's had a stack of good results, and he's a person whose list I think was incredibly clever and nuanced. So I had a lot of respect for sort of what he brought in terms of a build. Him as a person, I was a little bit worried. Like, I'm just going to be honest, I was a little bit worried because we'd had some interactions online and he had interactions with my friends online. But I can't speak highly enough of this guy. I had so much fun playing him, and I think it's a really good sense check, that you should leave any preconceptions at the door. Once you get to the table, a person is almost always going to be better than you give them credit for. So I'm rapt that I got to play him round 2. I'll just quickly run through his list because, as I said, the tech in this list I really, really liked. And from a build perspective, I think this was the cleverest list there. And I think, he's ended up finishing in 5th, but he easily could have won the event. He was coming 2nd overnight. So he's got Archaon leading the army, and then it's supported by a heap of different units and endless spells that debuff your bravery. So Archaon starts with a -2. The Chaos Lord in the army has a -1 bravery debuff. Chaos Marauders or Marauder Horsemen, I don't recall which, have a bravery 1 debuff. He's got the spell from Slaanesh, which is a bravery 2 debuff. He's then got the Spinks, which is a bravery 2 debuff. And then what else did he have? Oh, he just had a whole heap of different stuff, right? Oh, there's a thing from the Chaos book. He's got the Tome of Eyes, which is a spell, right? You cast it in front of Archaon. It extends his reach and it gives him this little nozzle. It's a family show. I was trying to come up with the right word. It gives him a little nozzle that he's then able to get into little nooks and crannies, and gives him additional range for casting, but also it gives him access to another spell, which is a bravery debuff. So effectively he can get your army down to -10 bravery. And you might sort of be thinking, well, in the age of Lumineth ignoring Battle Shock and OBR being pretty prevalent and Bravery 10 everywhere, and Lizard Men that have 6 command points a turn, why does that matter? Well, it matters because he coupled all of those debuffs with a unit of 6 Crypt Flayers from the Flesh Eater Courts book. So obviously you can take those as mercenaries, and the issue with doing that, I suppose, is that they then reduce the number of command points you receive in turn 1 by 1. So typically if you're just generating 1 per turn, you wouldn't get a command point. But Archaon's special rule is that he gives you 2 command points a turn, so that really isn't too much of a detraction. So what he can do is he can, debuff the world, get you down to bravery 0, -1, -2, -3, and then whatever those flayers touch, they end up screaming off, and then they also do mortal wounds in combat. Now, one of the things that Joel did with his list, which was clever and incredibly frustrating against me, is that he won the roll-off. He was from the Realm of Shadow, and he then made all of the terrain on the board line of sight blocking. So the only things that I could see with my crawlers were those flayers and Archaon. And that's really problematic for me, because to kill Archaon, I first need to kill the Sorcerer Lords. While Archaon is on a 3+ re-rolling save, he's almost impossible for my army to remove. So he won that roll-off. He chooses the realm. We were both 9 drops. He also then outdrops me and gives me first. And I feel like the sum of those two things put the game significantly in his favour. We played a really tight game, and I was right in it. I got Archaon down to 2 wounds. I got the Hex Wraiths flying over him, then double piling in. They got him down to 2 wounds, but he just sort of survived, and then he was able in his subsequent turn to kill the world with Archaon, fighting twice, doing a little bit of healing, border wounds in the hero phase, all of that stuff combined. But the thing about this game, right, is he gives me first turn. I move up and I score, and I max score because all my battle line's able to get onto objectives, and I hold the primary. Then he's also in that summoning sub-faction, and he's able to summon on 10 Marauders who are just an absolute pain on my right flank, like really difficult for me to deal with. And he sort of moves his units up in such a way that I still can't get any shots off on his auxiliary units. So even if I'm not killing the Sorcerers, I want to be killing the units of Marauder Horsemen or Marauders or Chaos Warriors on foot, because then ultimately it gets down to a game where he's got Archaon left on the board, but I have a whole army, and my army can be in 3 places, whereas Archaon can only be in 1. But regrettably, I just couldn't do that, and that was down to his realm choice, and I just think that was, with the type of build that he had, a really inspired choice. So that was, it was a really good game. in terms of my learnings and my mistakes, I was greedy on one flank. I was holding an objective, and I would have been able to continue to hold that objective and trade units, but instead I tried to kill one of his units that was also contesting the objective, and they ended up fighting before me because of the sequencing in the combat phase. Killed my Hex Wraith, then in his turn he's able to kill my zombies, and that's a big swing. It's a 2-point swing in what was ultimately like a 4-point game. And then the other probably mistake, I guess, that I made is in one of my turns, my Hex Wraiths, the big block of 20, retreated out of combat with Archaon so that I could charge in the next turn with +1 attack, playing for the double. And I moved over Archaon. He's got a 4-up save against mortals. I would have been better off retreating and moving them over an infantry unit and killing bodies, because as it turned out, I probably could have held that objective for 1 point as well. Just the sum of these small mistakes was the reason that I wasn't able to score the requisite points to win. But conversely, Joel was just making consistently good decisions. Like, I was reflecting on our game on the drive home, and I was just like, you know what, that dude's just playing at a higher level than me at the moment. Like, I think I can get there. And I think with adequate practice and a stronger list, I can beat Joel, and I played him and beat him in the past. But I was just like, I've just got to respect that a person actually played a better game than me. Like, I was thinking about the things that he did, which were at the margins, and it was things like the way that he moved his Marauder Horsemen so that I could never fight them, the way that he supported Archaon in terms of teleporting a sorcerer to where Archaon was going, not to where Archaon was, so that it meant in subsequent turns he had reroll saves. All of those little things he did really, really well, and that's the difference, I think, between, you know, a mid-table brawler running an Archaon list and a really top table player getting the absolute most out of him. And to be frank, it was just really cool to play against someone at that level. And I look forward to the next time I get him, and I feel like I'll go into that game confident I'll try and win. All right, round 3. So far, I've had 2 ripping games. I'm having a great day. The TO Jason put on a barbecue for lunch both days. Cannot complain. Smashed a massive burger. Was just loving life. And then round 3, I get drawn against another opponent who's running Zench. I've recorded this one before, so I'm just like, I'm at a point now where I'm double curating, right? So I had gone into some detail about the mechanics of this game, but I don't think that they warrant discussion. I lost this game to a change host list. It's easy enough to look up online who's running the change host list. I played this person previously and had issues with the rules. That this person, to my knowledge, had issues with the rules in tournaments in Geelong and also Bendigo this year. So we're at 4 from 4. I keep copious notes when I play. I'd written down notes at the start of our game and made comment to the opponent around their destiny dice. So they'd rolled their 9 dice. My notes sort of say that they got 3 1s, 3 2s, 2 3s, and a 6. That's the 9 dice. The 1s are good, obviously. The 6 is good. I made comment to my opponent, that's really good for me because it means you can't protect your characters from my crawlers, because obviously, the characters have 4 and 5 plus saves, and my crawlers are going to be in a position to actually take them out, which isn't usually the case in the Zench matchup. The Destiny dice can protect you from that damage 5. I have my first turn, the Destiny dice, all of which are completely different sizes, colours and shapes. So very hard to, just as a starting point, very hard to get your head around. I think you need a little token holder, Pro Painted Studios do them. Craftsman Wargaming over here in Melbourne probably do them as well. A little token thing that you can put them out prevalent on display. Unfortunately, my opponent, I've got photos of this as well. It's not like I'm just saying it. My opponent had put them behind pretty obscuring terrain, so I couldn't actually see his Destiny dice pool. My Mortek Crawler that does what it does, hits some wounds, and he proceeds to pull out a 5. And I just say, mate, you didn't roll a 5. I know that you didn't roll a 5. These are the things you rolled. He said, no, here it is, and he just shows me the 5 and proceeds to play. And at the time, I sort of just played through, and I guess in hindsight, if I had my time over, I would have just gone and got the TO then and called it a game. We played for about probably another 15 minutes, and then I just shook his hand and said, all right, dude, you win. Well done. So that to me is incredibly disappointing that it happened. It's an anecdotal example of the sort of stuff that happens. I've played now, I think I'm at 98 events. I've played 98 events, and I've played who knows how many thousands of games, and I'm talking across half a dozen systems here. I'm not talking explicitly about AOS, right? And in the history of all of my gaming, I've played against two people who have cheated, and I've played, 3 games. So I played one person twice. I've played 3 games against people who have cheated. So I'm not saying that this is like some prevalent issue that we need to stamp out and, competitive power gamer whack does what he, cheat, blah, blah, blah. This isn't clickbait this time. But yeah, it was obviously incredibly disappointing that happened. I understand subsequently in a later game there were also issues of a different nature. It's like, what are you going to do? I don't want to harp on about this. It's a 5-game event where I've had a fantastic time. The TO has done everything in their power to ensure all the players are having a great time. But incidentally, can I just say, change host, the strongest or second strongest build in the game, into mixed death. Mate, you don't need to cheat. I'm telling you, if you just deploy 12 flamers on the board and have half a brain, you should beat me. You don't need to cheat. You don't need to cheat to win that one. So anyway, it is what it is. I've, by choice this second time round, not named the player, and by choice this second time round, not gone into greater detail about the game, and just to say, if this individual wants to reach out and have a chat, I'm absolutely all ears. But facts are facts, so it'd be more about an apology than anything else. And the other thing, I guess, I just quickly say is that we won't be at my club, at any rate, we won't be facilitating or hosting that kind of behaviour. So don't bother chucking your name in the ring. All right, day 2. Whoa, Jason Spinks. Now, poor Jason, I didn't take a photo of his army. I was supposed to be playing overnight. I was drawn to be playing Seraphon and its Places of Arcane Power, and I thought, you know what? I don't mind Fangs of Sotek in this particular scenario. They need to get a little bit aggressive with their characters, and their characters project all of the power. Their characters, not dissimilar to mine, their characters are the force multipliers. So Jason had just an awesome army, both the way that it looked on the table, you're just going to have to trust me there, and also just its construction. So he's gone the Dankhold Trog boss, who's generating command points and got a 5-up after save, sadly for Jason, only to mortal wounds. The Fungoid and the Magcap, and they've got cool spells and cool abilities as well. So the Moonface Mommet is like a way to increase the rend of the army. Hand of Gork is an amazing spell because it enables you to teleport friendly units around, which this army sorely needs. And then Itchy Nuisance makes you fight at the end of the combat phase. And trust me, those Rockgut Troggoths, getting a couple of those activations in before your opponent's able to strike can be really significant. So he's ended up running with 4 6s of Rockguts, 2 3s of Fell Waters, and then a battalion that basically just reduces his drops pretty significantly and gives his army retreat and charge. So really, really strong, really cool. And these guys are able to come back if you kill them. They're able to come back through the terrain piece for the army. So I would say in most of the scenarios at this event, Jason and I are at a pretty similar power level. He can do some really cool techie stuff. He's got really good output, and he's got a way, of keeping his characters a safe distance away from me so that they can continue to support the trolls. Unfortunately, in this game, the only way that he can score is if he sort of runs them out in the breeze. So he's had to push them up. There's one that's a significant margin away from your deployment zone because you're deploying in corners. He's had to run them up turn 1, and my 2 crawlers just looked at his 2 little goblin characters and destroyed one, destroyed the other. I then went in and fought some trolls because I wanted to, and it was fun. And then in my next shooting phase, my crawler was able to get a couple of shots through on the Dankhold, and that effectively is game. So this isn't one that we really can have too much nuanced or tactical discussion about. But I would just say that Jason was a fantastic opponent. He was really funny. He had this perfect destruction demeanor. You know how destruction players love destruction. They love their army. And they've just got this little nagging itch at the back of their brain where they need to let you know, Games Workshop give me nothing. They give me nothing. I wounded him with the Dankhold Trog boss, right? I wounded the Dankhold Trog boss. And I'm just like, yeah, 5 damage, but you get those 5 up after saves. It's like, no, destruction, don't get nice things. I'm like, oh, okay, sorry, I've touched a sore point. The little madcap's really cool as well. I like him. I'm going to talk about mixed destruction, which I think one person in the world is interested in, but that's okay. I like the madcap in mixed destruction because his spell is just on a friendly unit, so it's neg 1 to hit from shooting, and that could be really cool if you pair it with like a Maw Crusher or a Stonehorn, or if you pair it with even the Idol. Like, there's a lot of units that like getting that -1 to hit from shooting in destruction across the board. So yeah, I really like Jason's list, and he was really fun to play against. So hopefully I get drawn against him in the future, but it's in a scenario which is a little bit more evenly balanced, because as I say, my list, it's so I can protect my characters so well. Like, the Necromancer passes off wounds on a 4+, Guardian of Souls on a 2+. The Vampire was able to run far enough away that Jason could never actually get to him because he's on my fire objective. And then I just conga line 2 units of zombies about 6 inches apart in front of the vampire, so he basically can never get to the vampire because of the way my healing works. He could only ever kill 1 unit a turn, and then I'm protecting him with Hex Wraiths as well, so it's impossible for him to get that guy. He's going to score the whole game. And then the Guardian of Souls has both the teleport cloak but also handball wounds on a 2+. Although in saying that, in the first shooting phase, the Rock Gut Trolls were able to ping off 2 wounds to the Guardian, so that did actually worry me momentarily. But the Necromancer didn't even end up sort of challenging an objective. He just stayed back because I didn't need him to, because I was able to clear out his character so early in the game. So yeah, really, really good game, really awesome opponent. So happy I got to play him. That was my first time playing against Jason, and I really enjoyed it. All right, round 5. So I'm a mid-table warrior at this point. What am I? 2-2. If I win this, I'm able to get back some respectability. And I'm paired against Fletcher Alldarker. So Fletch is one of the Geelong guys, but I'd never had a chance to play him. And he rolled up to the tournament with a pretty interesting Sons of Behemoth list. He had the 2 gate crashers, gate smashers, whatever they're called, and then a unit of 3 baby giants, and then he had the Forge World Giant. Now, the Forge World Giant is honestly, he's like almost a baby giant taller than the Mega Gargant. So anyone that's frothing at the mouth, oh, look at these big models they've given us, like, you got to go check that bloke out. He's enormous. He is maybe the worst 500 points you could invest in a unit, though. God, his damage output is pretty lackluster, and yeah, he's not as tanky as the Mega Gargants, and his output is worse. So, and he's not a character. So obviously, in their infinite wisdom, they've pointed him as being more expensive. This was a really interesting game. I come into this game, right, and I've been pretty overtly critical of the Sons of Behemoth as a battle term. I think that they're really poorly designed. I think they're really weak. And I think that they've got some they've got a patronage, right? They've got a group of players that are sycophants, and that's worrying. They've got it happens sometimes with armies that the players just go all in, right? And that they become obsessed with their faction. So whenever that cult, not culture thing sort of happens, it always troubles me, and that's certainly the Sons of Behemoth. That's the Sons of Behemoth player base. So we're playing the total commitment. There's no deep striking in this one. Doesn't affect either of our armies, fortunately. If you hold your opponent's objective, you gain 3 points, while you hold your own, you gain 1 point. So there's a maximum of 8 points you can score in a given turn, but realistically, you're always protecting at least one of your home objectives, and then it's a case of trying to trade to pinch your opponents for a turn, and Fletch was able to do that. So turn 1, we both scored 2 each. He outdrops me and gives me first, which is obviously the right thing to do. But then turn 2, he pulls off a sneaky play, and he clears my lines with the unit of 3 baby giants, and he's able to skip out to a lead. So turn 2 is up 7-3, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, this is troubling, because it's really hard for me to steal his objectives. I was planning on doing a bit of a late game sweep, and him just being so slow that he couldn't get over to mine. But yeah, he got up, and I was really worried. And then it sort of got to this point in the game, right? We're at the end of turn 3, and he's up 9 points to 4. And I just sort of looked at him and I said, I think you've won the game, mate. I don't think I can come back from here. I end up winning priority, and I I dug deep, you know what I mean? I was thinking about what are all the options I have here, and I was working out what do I need to do, not now in this turn 4, what do I need to do in turn 5 to win, and what are the things we need to do in order to enable that. So I ended up picking off the unit of 3 and the big guy. But what I did more importantly was I moved every single infantry model in my army as fast as I could towards the objective being protected by the Forge World Giant. And then I moved a unit of 5 Hex Wraiths so that they were 13 inches away from the one being protected by his other Gatebreaker. So what that meant is if the Gatebreaker left that objective to go and try and score mine, or to go and to hurt my guys on his other objective, my Hex Wraiths would move up. So there was nothing that he could do in terms of a trade where I'm not getting that one. So I'm either holding the top objective and pinching the 3 back, and if he moves away, I'm sneaking up on that left objective. And ultimately what ends up happening is I run 20 zombies for 3 turns of the game, and I get all 20 of them onto an objective that's just got the Forge World Giant. I then get a unit of Hex Wraiths into a combat with him, so I clip over the 20 just on bodies. So even if he lives, I'm still holding it. But ultimately the Hex Wraiths killed him, and then the Giant fell over. And this was the most damage anything in his army did the whole game. The Giant fell over. It hit a unit of Blade Geist that I'd summoned. It hit 2 units of zombies. It hit a hero, and it hit 2 units of Hex Wraiths, right? And it did about 20 mortal wounds. So that was the best damage that army was able to get out. But yeah, basically in the final turn, I ended up getting up 14-12, and it was because the zombies had shuffled their way up the board in the early turns. They were doing that primarily to screen him and stop him from clearing my lines. But yeah, I ultimately got away with the win in that game. It was so much fun. Like, as much as I dislike the army, I like him as a person, and I like those games where you have to like really think to eke out a win. That was great. All right, so where do we land with the results? I think I ended up finishing 7th or 8th, but 3 people that were 3-0 or thereabouts dropped out overnight because one of them had a cold, and there was it was a tiny COVID scare just of what's a responsible thing to do if we've been in close contact with this person for a lot of time, and they've ended up pulling up stumps and not coming back. So that affects the results, and it affects this strength of schedule, because that was obviously a determining factor. And then we had a bloke who, like, let's just call it what it was, who cheated, who's up the top as well, so that affects it. So it's like I go up for if you take the cheat score out, and I go down if you include the sick people. So let's just say I finished 7th or 8th. I think that's reasonable. I want to give a shout out to the overall winner, who was my mate Hayden. Hayden and I play every Wednesday, and Hayden beats me every Wednesday. So I was really glad that he's able to get the fruit of all those reps. Hopefully now he'll stop playing. This is the situation, right? He plays Fangs of Sotek, the strongest Fangs of Sotek list in the whole game, in my opinion, into my mixed death, and I take like wacky stuff and try and pull off strange combos. So I don't know, you call him a winner, or you could call him a loser in that situation. It's up to you, I suppose. So congrats to Hayden. I'm rapt that you won, man. And hopefully this means you'll tone it down a level or two, and we can have some more competitive games. Or maybe I'll just have to go up to your level. Maybe that's the trick. And then I'll just give my votes for the weekend as well. I want to give one vote to Joel G. Like I said, he just played such a tight game. I really enjoyed it. I don't care if I win or lose. So losing to somebody who plays really well is the best for me, because it gives me so many things to think about. So many little things that I could have improved on in my game. And then, like, what can I learn from his game? What things did he do that I'm going to pinch and try and apply myself in future games? So I really enjoyed that. I hope I get drawn against Joel again in a future event. And I think he was saying he's going to some of the ones that I'm planning on going to for the rest of the year. So hopefully we cross paths there, and I'm able to get one back on you, mate. Next, I want to give 2 votes to Jason. So Jason was the tournament organizer. It was the first time that he'd run an event, and you wouldn't know that from how smoothly things went over the weekend. He was awesome. He did some wacky sort of things in terms of, we had a dartboard, and if you hit the dartboard, like everyone got darts, right? If you hit the dartboard, then you won a prize. And I don't get the bit, but the Sayos were first prize. If you got the whatever the bullseye is, and then second prize was Bellacore, so that was funny. And people seemed more excited about the Sayos, which are a disgusting biscuit over here in Australia. I don't know if you've even got them abroad, but you're not missing out if you don't. They're foul. But yeah, 2 votes to Jason. He just did such a good job making sure that everyone was having a good time. His organisation before the event, setting up the down under pairings, it just ran so smoothly, man. And I really hope that you enjoyed it, because you put in for the community, and people really appreciate that and really value it. So thank you. And then I give 3 votes to Jared Coots. I mean, we just had such a fun game. We're able to play our games in an hour. Every time we play, we're just able to finish our games in an hour. Like, we both know what we're doing. We rushed through it, and then we just went and talked about like life for a couple of hours afterwards, which was really fun. Like, went out for a nice long lunch, had a couple of skinny flat whites, and yeah, the best thing is Coots doesn't really care about Age of Sigmar. He's like a hobby magpie. Like, he does a little bit of everything. He's into the X-Wing and he's into other systems, right? But his mates know that he went out for lunch with me. So I just said to them, just so you know, every single thing I know about AOS 3, I told Jared. So if you just ask him, I'm sure he'll tell you. So apparently they've been flat out, just absolutely flat out on the messages to him, trying to get intel when he has none. So that's probably the highlight of the weekend for me. All right, let's do some quick shout outs. I've already run for 40 minutes. I'm a fair bit over where I wanted to be. Grimdark Life, these guys, I just found out about them recently. I went back and watched some of their old videos. They love saying the word first, and they were certainly first to drop some of the AOS 3 rumours, particularly those around like the charge reactions and some other stuff. They've just dropped a video, if you're interested in knowing about the starter armies for AOS 3, they've just dropped a video where they go into some detail, recounting what their sources told them. Some of the stuff that they've said is completely new to me. I've not heard it from anywhere, so that's cool. I hope it's true. It'd just be a really interesting, exciting time if that new faction comes to light. The next thing I just wanted to shout out was Summer Smash. So Summer Smash is an event being held on August 28th and 29th. It's a convention, and one of the games being run at the convention is Age of Sigmar. So I just thought I'd give those guys a shout out. If you're in Victoria, check it out, have a look. They always have really fun events down there. Unfortunately, I won't be able to go to that one. I'm up at Toowoomba with the Daggy Dads. With Simon and Chris trying to win an event up there, so we'll see how that goes. And the next thing I wanted to shout out is Tetris, right? So people that are professional, in inverted commas, professional Tetris players, quite literally are freaks of nature in terms of the speed at which they're able to tap the controller in order to continue playing at level 19. And recently there's been a massive revelation in the Tetris world. And if you think about a Nintendo controller, right, it's a rectangular grey controller. It has 2 buttons, A and B, and then it's got a directional stick. If you think about that, there's hyper tappers who can tap that at a speed which is so quick, like as a person watching, you can't even compute what they're doing, right? But these hyper tappers were able to break all these world records, but there was a cap at the speed to which they could do it. So there's traditional control, which you or I use because we're plebs. Then there's these hyper tappers. A third way of playing Tetris has recently been revealed. And basically what the people do is they hold a thumb on the control pad and they hold a finger on each A and B permanently. That's on one hand. They then turn the controller over, so the controller's upside down on their lap, and they play the controller like a piano or a drum. They actually hit the controller, right? And they're able to get better purchase then, and there's greater surface area, and they're hitting speeds which are like 20 hertz a second, right? 20 cycles per second. Think about your thumb hitting something. Like, think about your thumb clicking a pen 20 times in a second. It is insane. Well, these people, like, they've flipped the game on its head, and I have nothing but respect for them. And I hope someone's able to do something similar in AOS. Imagine some dude rolls in and all of a sudden his dice are triangular instead of square, and he yields some advantage over that. Well done, man. So anyway, I just thought it was awesome. I might even bother doing show notes and putting a link into the video which goes into some detail about this, but it's remarkable the speeds they're getting. And if anyone knows the speedrunner Cheese, he's got the world record in Super Mario 64. Cheese is doing some stuff like, and you watch it and you're just like, is this real? Like, this looks like the Matrix. They sped up time. So there you go. The other person I just wanted to give a quick shout out to was John Scriven. Scrivo's done some artwork for the channel, and it's jaw-dropping. I love it. It's so cool. He hit the design brief so well. And anyone that's got like a project like that and they're looking for an artist out there, I couldn't recommend John highly enough. He was so good to work with. He was so receptive to feedback. He was so quick. He sent me such good quality vectors. Just love it. Everything about that interaction was awesome, and he's a terrific human being. That's me for this week. I think, if you've gotten through 44 minutes, I'll just give you a little snippet. What we're going to see in AOS 3 is an attempt to reduce spam. So there's going to be some strange unit cap rules around the repetition of units. So it's a bit of a weird one, but basically you go like a unit of 40 shooters or something, then the next unit you take could only be like a 20, and then there's a cap on the total number of shooters you could take. So we're not going to see, I don't think, my understanding is I don't think we're going to see 7 units of 3 ELs. I don't think that would be a legal list. So thanks for sitting through that. That was way more fun for me to do than a stupid rumours video. Like, I just enjoyed it so much more. So my next video almost certainly will just be about AOS gaming or thinking or ideation or whatever, and I'll speak to you then.